Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are, with all the new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From monster slams to dishing the rock to cleaning the glass, get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking how many points your favorite player will have. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. Right now, the Oklahoma City Thunder have supplanted the Boston Celtics as the favorites to win the title on DraftKings at plus 225, with the Celtics right behind them at plus 235. First time, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. Got a jam-packed show for you guys tonight. We're hitting that really bizarre game between the Golden State Warriors and the Los Angeles Lakers, the Brandon Pajemski badly outplays Luka Doncic game. We're going to be talking about that game from the perspective of both teams. One of the things I want to get into there is that, yes, there was a lot of weird stuff tonight that you can sort of compartmentalize a little bit, but there are also some realities there that are scary if you're a Lakers fan. So we're going to be getting into that, as well as the Warriors finally get a signature win in the Jimmy Butler era, going on the road and kind of, I thought, dominating the Lakers. We're going to get into that game for quite a bit. After that, we got our weekly course correction segment with Microsoft. I want to talk about Giannis and the unbelievable night he just had tonight on the road in Philly. And then at the tail end of the show, I want to talk a little bit about the Grizzlies Heat game in the first game of the TNT slate. Specifically about Ja Morant and his superpower and why that kind of keeps things somewhat open-minded for me as it pertains to the Grizzlies' future. And then at the tail end of the show, just like we do on every one of these nighttime live shows, we're going to do like 10 to 15 minutes of questions from the chat. You just have to be subscribed. Drop your questions in there. Jackson's going to come on the show. We'll talk a little bit of hoops. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing some great work on social media. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where we're getting more content out throughout the course of the year. And then last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments so we can get it into our mailbag next week. All right, let's talk some basketball. So one of the things I talked about in this morning show, if you guys remember correctly, it's not the first time I've talked about it, but it's the concept of styles making fights. And we did a whole bit at the tail end of the show, if you guys remember, where I talked a little bit about this game specifically and how it was going to be about the Lakers' perimeter size versus the Warriors' perimeter speed. And I was curious to see which party in this instance would be able to leverage their advantage more. A lot of times we think of a certain type of player being unable to play. Oh, we could play this guy off the floor. He can't handle this or he can't handle that. Most of the time it comes down to, like, are your fast guys doing a better job of leveraging their speed than your big guys are doing leveraging their size, right? And interestingly enough, in the early portion of the game, the first handful of possessions, the Lakers were getting fantastic shots every single time down the floor, posting smalls with Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, and Luka Doncic. And if it wasn't for Brandon Pajemski's early shooting stretch that he went on, the Lakers would have built themselves a sizable lead in the early portion of the game. The Lakers were getting a lot of offensive rebounds, beating the Warriors to the ball. That brief little stretch of time, that first shift, that first whatever it was, 5 or 6 minutes, everything was going the Lakers' way as it pertains to those styles making those fights, right? From that point on, literally for the rest of the game, I thought the Warriors just kicked their ass. I thought they beat them to every single loose ball. They dramatically compromised the Lakers just about every time down the floor just by running and getting into their pace. in the half court, getting in and out of actions quickly. I thought one of the perfect examples of that was right when the Lakers cut it to 5, and then Steph came in right after the timeout, just zoomed up to the top of the key and curled right around a screen and just had an easy layup. And it literally looked like he just cut through them like a knife through butter, as every Laker was kind of stuck in the mud. And we're going to get into a bunch of different elements of how this, fight manifested between the two styles. But the bottom line is the Lakers were able to leverage their size for about one shift. And then for the rest of the game, it didn't matter. The Warriors just, I thought they completely controlled the game. Every time I looked at the scoreboard, I really couldn't believe that the game was as close as it was. The late stretch after the Warriors went up, it was just basically Austin Reeves shooting. And the only thing keeping them close there in that middle portion of the game was Rui Hachimura and LeBron James. I thought just about every Laker outside of Austin in that fourth quarter, and then LeBron and Rui, I thought every one of those guys got outplayed by their Warriors counterparts. And I thought it was just a clean, dominant, kind of wire-to-wire type of victory. I talk a lot about this concept. There's a feeling you can get watching a game. It's hard to explain, but a lot of times it's separate from the scoreboard because there's so much weirdness, right? There's all these different random things that can happen in a game that swing the result one way or another. But there's a feel that you can feel in a basketball game when one team is just getting things easier than the other team is getting them. I'll give you an example. I thought the Lakers game when they beat the Pacers, the one where LeBron got the tap in, I thought the Lakers controlled that game. They tricked it off at the end, but throughout the entirety of the game, things just felt easier for the Lakers on offense than it was for the Pacers. Similarly, the Lakers were close in this game for the most part. They kind of hovered within that, 7 to 15 point range for the most part. But as I was watching the game, everything felt like a chore for the Lakers and everything looked more fluid and easy for the Warriors. And that's concerning for me in the big picture as it pertains to the Lakers, but I want to wait until we get into some Lakers stuff later on in the show. So early in the game, Lakers are starting to punish the Warriors with their size. Brandon Podziemski just goes on that little hot streak right at the start of the game, hitting 3 or 4 threes in the first few minutes. And this is an important part of game plan for opponents for the Warriors and beating the game plan for the Warriors themselves. I've talked a ton this year about how teams are going to concede 3-point shots to Draymond Green. They're going to concede 3-point shots to Brandon Podziemski. They're going to concede 3-point shots to Jonathan Kuminga. Those guys went 11 for 17 from 3 tonight. If that is going to be a swing, forget about the Lakers for a minute, regardless of who they play. First round, second round, third round, if the Warriors are going to get to where they want to go, those guys are going to have to hit shots. It actually kind of reminds me of the dynamic with the Nuggets, because with the Nuggets, it's similar with Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson and Russell Westbrook. There's these guys that teams, as far as the game plan goes, will concede shots to, and they're going to have to knock them down. I thought those threes from Brandon early in the game were huge because they covered for that brief stretch of the game when the Lakers were kind of beating them to the ball and just leveraging their size. One of the big game plan things in this game that I thought was fascinating, the Lakers, for the most part, when I've watched them, have run a lot of deep drop with Quentin Post. They like him better under the basket than they do on the perimeter. He can have some issues in space. And this is where not being married to your basketball philosophy, but rather catering your basketball philosophy to the surrounding circumstances is so important. Because if you do that against the Lakers, they're going to kill you. Consistently, since Luka went to the Lakers, they have struggled against switching, and they've eviscerated teams that have run traditional coverages, chasing over the top of screens and things along those lines. And again, we're going to talk about the Lakers' struggles there here in a minute, but from a game plan standpoint, the smart thing to do with Quentin Post or with anybody is to switch, because even if you give up dribble penetration or first of all, you can force Luka into step back threes, and Luka his shot making is right back in the gutter like it was when he first came to the Lakers. Or you can have a plan for dribble penetration that is a little easier to manage than blitzing a ball screen or ending up in a really compromised situation on a skip pass because you had to load up the strong side so much in pick and roll because you're sitting in a drop coverage. And so I thought that was really smart. Just in general, all game long, the Warriors were able to stagnate the Lakers and make them attack post mismatches or general mismatches everywhere on the floor, right? Here's the problem. The only guys in the game that were having any sort of success punishing smalls were Rui Hachimura and LeBron James, and you're not going to play through Rui that much because he's Rui Hachimura. You're going to play through Luka a lot. And in order for the Lakers to be able to score against a switching scheme like that, Luka's got to be able to score the basketball. He's got to be able to compromise the defense against these switches. It was a really smart game plan from Steve Kerr. Everybody did an amazing job in their individual defense possessions. Draymond, I thought him specifically in his possessions off of LeBron and Rui, one of the things that I've talked about consistently this year, specifically with Draymond and Gary Payton, is their ability to like make it look like there's an opening because they've got a foot in the paint, but they are so anticipatory with the way they read the pass before it happens and where the pass is going that they can throw these closeouts that erase those openings. There's two early in the game, skips to Rui Hachimura in the right corner, where Draymond Green closed out on him. And Luka was dribbling, live dribble, like off the left wing, and the Warriors are completely loaded up on the strong side. And the skip pass is the read. That's the read you're supposed to make in that situation. But Draymond's superpower is his ability to be able to cover ground the way that he did. And he just did a great job shutting down those windows every single time they appeared. I thought their rebounding was excellent. Again, there was, it's so funny watching the difference between Steve Kerr and JJ Redick. And JJ's new, and obviously he's kind of like getting his bearings still in the profession. But you can tell he's like this competitor that runs super hot. Because I thought if you watched like the two press conference, the two like coach interviews after the first quarter and after the third quarter, seeing the two of them juxtaposed with each other was actually really funny because JJ's like clearly really terse and pissed off because his team's playing like shit and all of his guys are struggling and he's just all upset. Like 26-22 first quarter. I mean, the Warriors were in control and they had dominated the second half of the first quarter, but Steve Kerr was just like, yeah, like early in the game, I thought we were crashing too hard and the long rebounds were coming out towards the elbows, and we just need to, crash more towards the elbows so we can be more prepared for some of these long rebounds. But we'll be fine. Like I thought we controlled things defensively. He's just like so like calm and like measured in his approach. But I thought the bit that he talked about with the rebounding was really fascinating because that's literally what was happening in that first quarter when the Lakers were missing those threes. The corner crashers for the Lakers were crashing up to the elbows and the Warriors were crashing into the paint. And it's just a simple concept. If you miss a corner three off of the heel of the rim or off of the left side of the rim, like it's just going to go careening off towards the top of the key. And you got to have guys there to win those battles. And like I said, just absolute dominance on the glass by the Warriors after that first quarter. There was a stretch when the Lakers were making their push periodically in the fourth quarter. And I tweeted out, I was like, this is just a fake comeback to me until they show that they can get a defensive rebound, because it was like they'd get it to 5, but then they'd get a stop and then Jimmy Butler would get another offensive rebound. And they just kept getting beat to the ball. Even those late game possessions where it's like somehow Jimmy Butler's just coming away with the ball in these situations when there's all these bodies around, when there's all this congestion around. And like, make no mistake, I talk about it all the time. Basketball is a contact sport. These are fist fights. This is not, everyone wants to talk about scheme. Everyone wants to talk about some magic solution for why the game went the way it went. For the most part, it's in the trenches, and it's about fighting for position, for loose balls, winning different leverage battles, like little things like big late game possession. LeBron's driving, I think it was on Jonathan Kuminga out of the right corner, and like LeBron's trying so hard to turn the corner, and he had turned the corner so many times that game, and like Kuminga won a battle. He won one battle against LeBron, sliding his feet across the lane. That was the one where LeBron threw the pass to Dorian Finney-Smith cutting along the baseline and it went out of bounds. That's not a scheme thing. It's a physical battle. It was Jonathan Kuminga and LeBron James fighting to see LeBron's trying to turn the corner. He's trying to blow through that right shoulder and get that leverage so that he can turn and finish with his left hand at the rim. And Kuminga's fighting like hell to hold his shoulder there and to slide his feet and to win that leverage battle. This is where these things are won. And I just thought the Warriors kicked their ass tonight in all of those physical parts of the game. And that ultimately, like we talked about off the top, when you're talking about the two styles, their speed, they won the ground battle all game long. And I thought they deserved to win as a result. A couple of other kind of interesting things. Jonathan Kuminga showed a little stretch of some matchup hunting in this game that I thought was fascinating. In that fourth quarter stretch, they capitalized on a couple of switches with Austin Reeves on Kuminga, and he got a couple of buckets in a row. I thought that was kind of an interesting example of how Jonathan Kuminga is going to be an up and down player, and there are going to be certain games where you're scratching your eyes out and you wish he wasn't on the floor, but there's going to be other games where he could be instrumental to what you're trying to do. I mean, he hit 7 shots tonight. He was +9 in his minutes. Like yeah, that was a big time performance in a big time game. He made more field goals today than Luka Doncic did. And that's a huge kind of like swing factor in a game like this. Really, really impressive performance from the Golden State Warriors. Again, one of the exciting things too is like I'm going to be talking a little bit about with the Lakers the potential for guys to play better, right? Like there's a version of this game where Luka plays better, right? There's a version of this game where Dorian Finney-Smith plays better, those sorts of things, right? There's also a version of this game where Jimmy Butler plays a lot better. And if you're looking for something in terms of like a potential upside outside of what we saw tonight, Jimmy, I thought early in the game was just kind of going through the motions. In general, this game kind of had a really strange feel. You could really tell in the early part of the game that neither team knew how they wanted to attack each other. And so there's a lot of standing around, a lot of passing the ball around the perimeter, a lot of really ugly offensive possessions from both teams. And some of those possessions for Jimmy Butler manifested. I thought LeBron was doing this too early in the game where he had those two back-to-back turnovers where he's driving into the lane and no one's helping. So he's in a one-on-one, but he's like trying to force some pass to a guy that's guarded. It's like, no, you need to be looking to score. You're leading a unit without your star on the floor. Same thing goes for Jimmy Butler. In those situations, like they need him to look to be aggressive. You're not going to get, 8 made threes out of Brandon Podziemski every single night. They're going to need more production out of Jimmy in that spot. But overall, I thought he made a bunch of big plays late. I thought that corner three he made late was big. He had 3 steals in the game, was beating the Lakers to a bunch of loose balls in some key situations. Really, really impressive performance from the Warriors top to bottom. I thought Steph, too, last piece I'll say on the Warriors before we get to the Lakers. Steph has been fantastic since the Jimmy Butler trade. He's at, coming into tonight, he was at like 28 points per game on 66% true shooting over his last 23 games on a court that had Jimmy Butler, that had LeBron James, that had Luka Doncic, that had all this star talent on the floor. I thought Steph was the best player on the floor. And I even though LeBron statistically performed really well, I thought Steph was able to consistently break down the defense. I talked earlier about how both teams didn't really seem to know how they wanted to attack each other in the early portions of the game. It crystallized for Golden State. They found out, they're about halfway through that second quarter. In that second quarter, they found out it's like, actually, let's just get Steph out into space against Luka. And we'll have him drive by Luka sometimes. We'll have him look to attack immediately off the catch, off of some off-ball screening action. There was one late, the big 3 he hit late where Draymond fell down. Like, he had Luka on a switch, but then Draymond just sprinted into a ball screen. I talked earlier today when we were talking about Jared Allen and the Cavs. When you sprint into actions, it makes you that much harder to guard. Draymond sprinted into that ball screen, and LeBron was too far back. And LeBron was late. It was bad defensive possession from LeBron. And a big part of that was Draymond sprinted into the ball screen, got Steph another clean look at basically a drop coverage possession off the left wing. But this is Steph is heating up right in time for what they're going to need him to be in this postseason run. And I thought he just came in here tonight and kicked the shit out of the Lakers and badly outplayed Luka and set his team up to be in a really good position in the standings as we come down the stretch here. On the Lakers front, as I always say, I don't really look at the scoreboard when I'm thinking about the postseason. And one of the main reasons why is because there's just so much noise in the regular season, whether it's from the schedule or it's a random role player doing this or a random guy being out of the lineup for whatever reason. There's also a lot of noise relative to the postseason where you'll see, the Phoenix Suns beat the Timberwolves every single game last year, and they had this awesome game plan for like how to beat the Timberwolves. But then they get into a playoff series, and it's like, oh, actually, none of these guys can guard Ant, and they're being super physical on defense, and we can't even like dribble the ball off the floor without losing it. So like everything shifted and changed, right? So what I'm looking at is are there any things from tonight that translate to a potential postseason series between these two teams? And the first one that screams off the screen to me is their struggles with switching. Ever since Luka came over to the Lakers, and again, I've broken this down before. I'll do a very short version of it here, but the short version of it is against drop coverage, against traditional coverages, Luka is so good at making all the natural reads He can, if you don't pick him up going downhill, he's just going to get into that like right around the block where he can shoot that little 7-foot bank shot that he's going to make like 60% of the time. If you do step up with your big man, he's throwing a lob to the center for a dunk. And if you tag the roller, he's skipping it to the weak side for a wide open three. And it's just he's so surgical with it that it's a death sentence. Like there's literally nothing you can do. And every team, for the most part, that has run that coverage against the Lakers this year with Luka Doncic has gotten torched. And for the most part, they've had a couple of good games, but for the most part, against these teams that just switch with their fives or switch generally everywhere on the floor, they've really struggled to score. And one of the big reasons why is when LeBron was healthy earlier on, Luka was bad. And then LeBron goes out. And during the phase that LeBron was out, Luka was very good. His shot making bounced back in a major way, but they just didn't have that additional defensive rebounding presence in the front court over that span because Rui, LeBron, and Jackson were all out. Now everybody's back, but LeBron is still kind of getting back into form. And here goes Luka again into another kind of like spiraling type of sequence. Luka has shot below 50% from the field in 5 of his last 6 games. He has absolutely no touch on his short range shot making. Before tonight, he was just 28 for 88 on floaters and on jump shots inside of 17 feet. So all those like jump shots that he was hitting nonstop in the playoffs last year, he made 3 of them per game last year in the postseason at 46%. He's shooting just 32% on them this year, and he's barely making 1 a game with the Lakers. He has like no touch on his short range shot making, 0 for 6 from 3 tonight. Bizarrely ineffective, Luka Doncic. And like the thing is there's a version of this where the Lakers can theoretically be very good against switching, but it's going to require the LeBron James that was there before he hurt his groin and the Luka Doncic that was there last year in the NBA playoffs. And so it's one of those things where like I've talked a lot about this. The Lakers have arguably the largest amount to potentially improve between now and May 1st. The Lakers could be dramatically better by May 1st, just simply from LeBron and Luka getting back to form and some team chemistry stuff and regaining their defensive identity, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the reality is it's also possible that they just don't. And I'm just going to be perfectly frank with you guys. If Luka plays like this in the postseason, they're going to get beat. They're going to get beat in the first or second round. There's no going the distance if you make a trade with Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic and you get this type of performance out of Luka in a big game. And I mean, strangely enough, the Lakers have dominated the middle tier of the NBA since Luka came. Every Houston, Minnesota, Phoenix, every team that's in that, kind of like just outside the top tier of contenders, the Lakers are kicking the shit out of those guys. They've faced 2 of the teams that I said that I would consider as the top tier contenders. Boston, who's been there all year, and Golden State, who I said I would add when we do our contenders list with Sam Vecini right before the start of the postseason. And in those 2 games, the Lakers pretty much got outplayed wire to wire, and Luka Doncic looked really, really bad in both games. And here's the thing. Early on, after the trade, I wasn't worried about it. I was just kind of like, give Luka some time. He'll be fine. He's one of the greatest players that we've ever seen at his age in this league. But here we are, guys. It's been months now. It's been 2 months, and he's going in the wrong direction. So I don't know what's going on with him. Part of the thing that I'm seeing too is like he's not even trusting himself in the short range. Like he's pump faking he's pump faking nonstop in that 10 to 15 foot range and just looking to grift for fouls instead of looking to take and make the shots that he was hitting half of at decent volume when he was in the postseason last year. So I'm hopeful that Luka will figure it out. I'm hopeful that this will all come together. But guys, like the Hoops Tonight staff, we've already gone over our schedule for the week of the play-in tournament. Like this shit is right around the corner. It's here. It's like here now. There's no like, let's give Luka a runway and see what he can do. Like there's a chance you're facing the Clippers, the Timberwolves, hell, the Warriors in 3 weeks. Like this needs to be these problems need to be resolved yesterday. And so I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about whether or not the Lakers are hitting at the right type of level they need to be hitting at to go on the run that they need to go on. The defensive struggle with speed. A lot of missed rotations tonight, a lot of missed defensive rebounds where they're slower to the ball. In this sort of situation, I want to at least account for some of the fact that the Lakers are kind of not in the same defensive rhythm that they were in the past. But the reality is there was only a very brief stretch there where they were good defensively with Luka right after the trade. There's been a pretty large sample now after that where they've been pretty bad defensively with Luka. And teams are looking to attack him out front over and over and over again. We did see an example in the second half tonight of a pre-switch, meaning where they brought Luka's man up into his screen and then LeBron went instead of Luka. But that was the only time I saw it. And for the most part, they were just conceding that switch. And if they're going to concede that switch, then they're just going to have to be better in their rotations than they've been being. If they defend like this behind Luka, who's been giving up dribble penetration the way that he has, I think they could get cut to pieces by a good offensive team when they get into the postseason. I talked a lot in other games about the idea of leveraging your strengths to hide your weaknesses. There's no doubt that all this stuff is connected. I'll give you guys some examples. Luka plays better from the start of this game. Immediately starts kicking ass, punishing mismatches, drawing double teams, spraying out beautiful kick-out passes to shooters. Now the threes that Dorian gets, the threes that Gabe gets, they're cleaner. They're more in rhythm. Now instead of those guys going 1 for 10 from three, they have much better shooting nights. Now as a result, the team is able to set their defense more. Now that they're setting their defense more and they're in control of the game and they're not trailing by 10, they're more invigorated, they're more motivated, they're flying around, they're making plays. See how, like, you can imagine a scenario where these things are connected. You can leverage your strengths to hide your weaknesses. The part that gets scary for me there is, as I said, like, we're on almost a 2-week stretch there where Luka just hasn't been as good. And so it's just a little concerning from the standpoint of right now, I haven't seen the Lakers put together a consistent stretch of like great basketball since LeBron came back from his injury. And so I'm definitely a little bit concerned there. That said, there is time. And, you know, if they do get a favorable first round matchup and they end up getting a win, they could have until May to get some of this together before they face a more serious team. Similar to what I talked about with Jonathan Kuminga, I did think we saw one clear advantage for the Lakers tonight, and that's that the Warriors can't guard LeBron. LeBron did exactly what I was just talking about Luka needing to do. He consistently, methodically found mismatches against guards where he liked his size and he liked the spacing of the floor, and he was able to get downhill and he was able to consistently compromise the defense for kick-out passes and for layups right at the front of the rim. That is, to me, a translatable thing to a series between the Lakers and Warriors. And so in an event where the Lakers beat the Warriors in a playoff series, it will require LeBron to continue to leverage that and for Luka to meet him at that level. And that really is the advantage there. If the Lakers are going to leverage their size, it's got to be LeBron and Luka together, punishing them all over the floor. All right. That's enough for that one random regular season game. Let's get into our other segments for the night. Welcome to Course Correction, brought to you by Microsoft. Just like star players and teams navigating performance hurdles, business decision makers today are under immense pressure to get things right. They must rise to the occasion, turning challenges into opportunities. Microsoft empowers these visionaries with AI solutions, simplified cloud and data management, and trustworthy, responsible AI. And when you're in the NBA, you have your own hurdles to face. In this segment, we explore the challenges faced by the teams or star players and how they can turn things around. Whatever challenge you're facing, Microsoft empowers you with the expertise to say, bring it on. This week, we're discussing Giannis Antetokounmpo's big night in Philly. Aside from the victory in the in-season tournament, this year has been a complete disaster for the Milwaukee Bucks. Year 2 of the Dame Giannis experiment. Dame has a full summer to work out, less drama going on in his life. They have a full training camp, lots of expectations. They start 2-8. Then you go 14-4 over your next 18 games. That's when they won the in-season tournament. Now you're 16-12. You've recovered. But in the 48 games since, they're 26-22. They're 13th in offense, 15th in defense, 24th in rebounding. Just incredibly mediocre. 13th best team in the league over that span. 42-34, 13th best record in the league for the entire season. Now they're staring down the barrel of having to face either Indy or New York in the first round without home court, then having to go through Boston and Cleveland consecutively without home court. And Dame is down with a deep vein thrombosis in his calf with no timeline to return, and Bobby Portis got himself suspended. There is every reason in the world for Giannis to feel defeated right now and to feel like he has no chance to get this done and to pack it in. But instead, he's just continuing to play the best basketball of his career. He was insanely good today on the road in Philly. He relied mostly on high ball screens with either Brook or with guards or wing ISOs. He had caught a couple of favorable matchups that he liked against Guerschon Yabusele and Colin Castleton and in space along the wing there. And in the screening actions and in the wing ISOs, he was just punishing them so relentlessly that he was able to generate a lot of clean playmaking opportunities from the defense reacting to him. And he had the best playmaking game of his entire career, making every single type of read, hitting guards, slipping out of his inverted ball screens to the three-point line. There were a couple plays where Brook Lopez had inside position as guys tried to front him in the post, and he threw a beautiful over-the-top feeds that just led Brook Lopez right into the basket for layups. He was skipping the ball. There were plays where Loman's in position. He's just rifling a pass to the corner to get another open three, throwing the ball over the top out of post-ups, driving and dumping the ball off to a guard underneath the basket, slipping along the baseline. He looked like Magic Johnson in transition. He had a behind-the-back pass in transition for a layup. He had another like beautiful lefty scoop pass around a guy's butt, like a wraparound pass around a defender to Taurean Prince cutting along the wing. He was just brilliant tonight in every single facet of the game. Looked like a floor general out there, just pointing at guys and telling them where to go, looking methodical and surgical on every single possession. He finished with 35 points, 17 rebounds, and 20 assists. The team was minus 10 with him off the floor in just 9 minutes. He played 39 minutes. And he still managed to lead his team to a 13-point win, just clearly sending the message that he's not going down without a fight. That's it for this week's course correction. Remember, Microsoft's AI solutions empower you to take bold steps and make informed decisions, sparking new ideas to help drive your business forward. With Microsoft as your trusted partner, you can navigate your journey with confidence, finding innovative solutions and reaching new possibilities. Visit Microsoft.com/challengers to learn more. We have one last short segment tonight on John Morant and the game winner he hit against the Heat. Then we're going to do our mailbag from the chat. So make sure you guys drop your questions in the chat. Remember, you got to subscribe to the channel first. Drop those questions. Jackson's going to hop on and we'll talk some hoops for about 10-15 minutes at the tail end of the show. So the Grizzlies beat the Heat 110-108 tonight in a really fun game. Tyler Herro and John Morant had an awesome duel in the second half, going off every time down the floor. Bam kind of kicked Jaren Jackson's ass, which was an interesting subplot and a feather in the cap of Bam's just the reputation he has as one of the best defenders in the league. Kel'el Ware had a really fascinating game, one of those classic like young talented player type of games where he just flashes tons of potential, showed some of his rim protection in this game, some of his potential as a vertical spacer, as a three-point spacer. It was a fun game from him, but John Morant completely takes over down the stretch, generating 3 straight buckets to win the game. He attacks Tyler Herro in a screen right around the top of the key, goes right around Tyler Herro, dunks it with 2 hands. Then there's this random Jaren Jackson possession where he tries to post up Bam Adebayo again, and it just looks really ugly, and he has a bad miss. That possession made no sense to me because they should have been going through Ja every time. But they do go back to Ja in the next possession. He goes to attack Herro again. This time they double team him. Swing. Wide open 3 for Jaren Jackson in the right corner. He knocks it down. And then after Tyler Herro ties the game with a beautiful floater. By the way, Tyler Herro, I want to compliment him. I think the very end of his release, just the flip of the wrist, might be the prettiest in the NBA. He literally looks like the coaches when they're trying to teach you to reach into the cookie jar. Just has like that perfect follow through on that little floater to tie the game. But then John Morant, very interestingly, calls for a ball screen to get Kel'el Ware switched on to him instead of Tyler Herro. I thought My guess is that the Grizzlies were banking on the game plan being to double team specifically off of Harrow, but just to switch anything else. And so I think Ja called for that specific screen with the intent of getting a one-on-one and not facing a double team. And he did. He got a one-on-one with Kel'el Ware, and he just went right downhill into his chest and took this comically large step back and took one of those patented little short-range jump shots that he takes, and he got the bounce, and he wins the game at the buzzer. And it's things like that that make Ja such a difficult player for me to like give up on, even with his health issues, even with the off-court issues he had earlier in his career. He just has a bona fide superpower. No one can keep him from scoring one-on-one. There are ways to deal with him in a team context, forcing lesser players to score. Memphis has a flawed team construct in general. We're going to talk about it here in a minute. But there's not a defender in the league that can stop him from getting to a spot in the short range and just popping up off the ground and shooting one of his patented little floaters or little short range jump shots. You can't stop him from getting to that shot. Not without sending multiple bodies and just somehow tilting the offense in a different direction. He's 50% on floaters this year. He's 45% on jumpers inside of 17 feet. Those are really good looks for him. It's like if it's a coin flip. If you get Ja in a one-on-one at the end of the game, even if you put a rim protector on him, even if you pack the paint, he can get to the middle of the floor and get just pop off the ground. I've talked about this a lot. The short-range shot making to me is far more valuable in the postseason context than mid-range shot making. If you can get into that inside of 17 feet, like inside the paint non-restricted area type of stuff. That's where I feel like there's real dependable shot making in the postseason. That's what Jokic has done for years. Back when Luka used to be able to make those shots, that's what he did for years. Like that is such a valuable part of surgical scoring in the half court. Now, the Grizzlies are a mess. I think they have to find a way to be better defensively around John Morant and Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson, while also making sure you create space so you can't tilt shots away from Ja. But this is still Ja's superpower, the foundational ceiling-raising talent that keeps this team interesting, and why I think there's always a case to just pivot and try to make it work before just bailing on him as a talent overall. All right, Jackson, let's talk some hoops, man. What do you got for us from the chat?
Yes, let's do it. Let's start with, there were a handful of Luka Doncic questions. Let's start with, why does Luka struggle versus big athletic wings? JB, JT, Jimmy Butler, Draymond, Andrew Wiggins come to mind. How can Luka overcome this to win a championship?
So I've actually seen him have a lot of success against certain types of wings. I'm more worried about him against the shorter, more fire hydrant types of wings. I think Luka just had a bad game tonight. Like I think we can I think we can acknowledge that the Warriors played really good defense, while also acknowledging that Luka's capable of playing much better than he did tonight. I think both things are true. Jaylen Brown did a number on him in the Celtics game. That is worth stating. I thought that was different than what happened tonight. I thought tonight Luka was just bizarrely passive, a lot of pump faking, a lot of grifting, and I just didn't think he inflicted himself on the game as well. I thought the Celtics game was much more of like a Jaylen, stole his lunch money kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there's also sort of a specific challenge for someone as smart as Luka to play against the Warriors, where you have Draymond on the back line, right? When you have a guy like Wiggins or Jimmy or whoever, Moses Moody in the first half, playing good, solid defense on the back line, but someone like Draymond who knows exactly the read that Luka wants to make, and as one of the few players who can recover in some of those spaces, makes it specifically challenging.
I thought that was a huge part of tonight's game, was Draymond preying on Luka's indecisiveness.
Yeah. All right, next one. This one has been asked in the chat like every single time we do one of these, so I'm finally going to get to it. Shout out to you guys for being consistent with the questions. Is it possible that Jimmy's impact will be bigger than Luka's this season?
No chance.
Yeah, that's sort of why I've held off on the question, because it seems a little Warriors fan-y. But I mean, I can understand the spirit of the question, because I think Jimmy does so many different things while Luka is just super, super elite at one thing, quote unquote. But come on, we can.
Jimmy wasn't exactly a world beater tonight either. Like he made some plays, but yeah.
Right.
Anyway. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he was pretty passive as well. All right. Hey Jason, how would you describe the difference between role players and if there are levels to them being elite? Example, Derek White is a role player technically, but so is Jackson Hayes.
Okay. This is actually a really interesting question, and I think there's a bunch of different elements to get into. So I think consistency is a big one for me in terms of like role player talent, and that stems from like a versatility of talent. So if you are a specialist, let's say Buddy Hield, for instance, and you're not making your threes, your impact craters. But for guys like Brandon Pajemski, or I even think Austin Reeves falls into this category. These guys that kind of are like they do all these like little things that can impact the game in ways that go beyond their shot making. And so I think that one of the underrated parts about it, like a Drew Holiday or a Derek White, is they're such great connective skill players because they can dribble, shoot, and pass really well that even if Drew Holiday goes 0 for 3 from 3 or 0 for 5 from 3, he can have a couple buckets slipping along the baseline in the dunker spot as a guard. He can slip out of screens with Tatum and make plays in 4-on-3s. He can be the best defensive player on the floor in any given game. He can do all these like different kinds of things. So I think ultimately that's it. Like, can you be a like a versatile enough player to be immune to like the differences in shot result? And then I think the second piece of it is like legitimate upside. Like there there's a difference between a Jackson Hayes, for example, and let's say a Bobby Portis. Like Bobby Portis can go for 30 in any given game, right? You're not expecting that type of upside from a Jackson Hayes. Similarly, like DeAndre Hunter with the Cavs. He's playing a smaller role with the Cavs, but he also has scoring talent that can manifest in, oh, he has 20 points in game 4 of a huge playoff game. Like those are the kinds of things that I think are a little bit different is like sometimes there are role players that can masquerade as stars for brief stretches as well. And but ultimately I think the night to night versatility, the night to night reliability is the main separator between good and bad role players.
Yeah, I agree. I was gonna say I think the upside is a big one, and then also just diversity of skill set. Like even you can see it on the Lakers. Like Rui Hachimura is able to do a lot more things, even when he's not necessarily lights out from three, than Jackson Hayes is able to do. And then I also think just being super, super, super elite
Yeah.
at something. Like if you're just insanely elite at something, you can Jackson Hayes is good at some things, but he's not really elite at anything. Davion Mitchell is insanely elite at defense. AJ Green on the Bucks, just insanely good at shooting, right? If you are like levels above your other role players of your similar type, then that can also sort of
that's like the Buddy Hield thing. It's like I was watching Duncan Robinson today, and like there's a level of like consistent shot making with him that is different, that literally brings two to the ball every time, and the Heat can like build an offense out of it. You know what I mean? Like that to your point, like like there's specialists and then there's specialists. there's another level to it.
Right, exactly. All right, what team other than the Cavs and the Celtics has the best chance to win the East? And slash, do you think any team?
Dude, I think there is such a massive chasm between those two. I mean, if I had to pick one, I would take the Knicks, I suppose. But like at this point, I is there any more sure thing in this playoff picture than a Cavs Celtics conference finals?
It doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it. Hey Jason, love the show. What are your ideal quote unquote basketball fantasy first round matchups for the East and the West? Just best possible basketball.
Okay, let's pull up the standings here. Best possible basketball. I don't want the Lakers and Warriors to face each other in the first round for two reasons. One, I'm terrified of them, which I said before tonight. I want the record to show. I said I was terrified of the Warriors before tonight. But I also just think it'd be a waste to have one of them get eliminated in the first round because I think they're two of the top 6 teams in the NBA. So I'm gonna go with this. I think Lakers Clippers would be a really fun first round series.
Yes,
okay,
I love the Lakers Clippers.
Nuggets series. Timberwolves, Warriors Rockets, Thunder Grizzlies. The case there, Warriors Rockets, you have the Dillon Brooks rivalry with Draymond. The
Yeah.
Thunder Grizzlies thing, there's the Ja Morant's not going to let everybody sit there and talk about how amazing Shea is for 2 weeks. With Lakers Wool or excuse me, with Lakers Clippers, we get the playoff series we've been begging for ever since Kawhi signed with the Clippers, and it was Timberwolves Nuggets. We get to solve, or we get to round two of that incredible 7 game series we got last year. In the East, I'm gonna go with Indy Milwaukee because they hate each other. I'm gonna go with the Knicks and the Pistons because they will hate each other by the end of that series.
Oh yeah.
And then Celtics Heat just because that's fun. And then Cavs Magic because they hate each other. So I think that would be the perfect series. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with most of those. I said this on another mailbag we did, I think, that I really want Pacers Pistons. It just feels it just feels very old school. I don't know. There's just something fun about it. And I also feel like it's a series that Cade can win, and I'm just more and more a fan of Cade every time I watch him. So I that's definitely the one in the East for me. That's definitely one in the East for me. All right, let's do a couple more. This one is why we you sort of touched on this a little bit in the Lakers segment of the show, but why does Luka foul bait on seemingly every shot? Is it a mental thing right
Yeah,
now?
I literally think he doesn't trust his short range shot making. He's shooting 14% less than he did in the postseason last year, and his volume is about a third what it was in the playoffs last year in terms of like short range shot making, which is such an important part of his game. And I think that in general, players tend to get more grifty the more they're struggling because you're literally
Yeah,
just trying to manufacture offense out of nothing. And it's just one like that was kind of the bizarre that was the griftiest I've ever seen Steph play tonight. Did you see that? Like, dude,
yeah,
he
he
was
was.
flailing
Yeah,
on every single shot attempt, which by the way, like my thing is like if every other guard in the league is doing it, do it. This is not a I don't
right,
blame the players for this. I blame the refs.
right,
Like you're going to stop
right.
doing it if it stops working, if you stop getting rewarded with free throws for it. But yeah, I think I think Luka, man, it's been such a bizarre experience rooting for him because he's had some nights where I'm like, this guy's fucking incredible. But then he's had other nights where I'm like, this is so bizarre. Like, why are you watching your teammate like give everything he's got and to try to keep his team in this game and LeBron, and you're just kind of like jogging and going through the motions. Like, where's
It's a lot of
where's
jog
where's
up
the
the court.
verve, man? Like, it just wasn't there. It was bizarre. Weird Luca game.
Yeah, it was a very strange looking game. All right, let's close with this one. Hi, Jason. Huge fan of the show. Was wondering which three players you think deserve to be DPOY candidates and why. I mean, the odds are certainly on DraftKings are certainly heavily favored towards Draymond and Evan Mobley, with Dyson Daniels being sort of a distant third. I've heard some Lou Dort conversations because of how good their defense has been. But what's your take
I was
there?
listening to Bill Simmons and Zach Lowe this morning, actually. And by the way, I'm not sure if you had a chance to check that out yet, but dude, Zach is so fucking amazing. He's so good at his job.
It's so great that they're
It,
back together.
as I
It's
was listening to
awesome.
that, I was like, dude, this guy is just the best at what he does. But
100%.
but Bill actually had a really interesting point about Lou Dort and his ability to basically just cut the head off the snake every single night. And that sort of player like
Yeah.
never wins DPOI. Because like even when Marcus Smart won it, like I didn't think he was like cut the head off the snake guy. He was more of like defensive
No.
playmaker type of guy, you know. And
Yeah. It's just guard Draymond
yeah,
at that point.
exactly. And so I kind of find that to be an interesting case. And I thought Bill's whole point about like his ability to cut the head off the snake as a type of value, I thought was really fascinating. I just think when I watch Draymond Green, I just
Yeah.
think he's better at defense than Evan Mobley. And like, look, I've watched a lot of Cavs
Yeah.
lately. I just watched them the other day in the Knicks or this morning in the Knicks game, and like, I just think Draymond is a more disruptive defender. I don't think Evan Mobley could do to the Lakers defensively what Draymond Green did to the Lakers. Like Dyson Daniels, really good player. I think he's got a ton of offensive potential. I've been talking about that on the show a little bit. His shiftiness and
Hmm.
his kind of like short range. He's got a little bit of that Ja Morant pop off the ground in the short range and make a little floater kind of thing.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
obviously is a wrecking ball on defense, but I think Draymond does more to damage a team's offense than any defender that I watch in the league.
Yeah, I agree. It's like if you were just saying Evan Mobley guard one single possession, I might be like, yeah, okay, maybe take that guy. But just in the whole construct of the game and the ability to understand on the mental level what the other team is trying to do and wanting to take those things away, it's been cool to see him get the credit again because they had a couple of weird seasons and he was hurt a couple seasons in a row, so he wasn't getting the games threshold, and also he was doing a lot of stuff, silly stuff on the court that was sort of taking away from his sort of perception around the league. But it's great to see him sort of get the credit again because they kept talking about it on the broadcast tonight, how he's trying to get 10 all defense selections and become one of the few players to have that honor. And I hope he gets there because he has been, I think, pretty unquestionably the best defender in the NBA of the last 10 years, 15 years.
I totally agree. And like the point you made about last year and the behavior is so fascinating because like I just kind of got a little bit of PTSD. Do you remember all the little shit he did last year?
Dude.
I still remember
How could I forget?
I still remember him getting himself ejected in like the first quarter of a super important game down the stretch, and like Steph just like looking down at the ground like
The Magic
so
game.
dejected from everything, and like he's just had his act together this year, and he's just been awesome. And a bunch of credit to those guys too for battling through a pretty limited roster in the first part of the year as well.
100%.
All right, guys, that's all we have for tonight. As always, we sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. We're taking the weekend off for you guys to enjoy the tournament. There's no nationally televised games other than NBA TV until Monday, if I'm not mistaken. And so I am actually going Monday night with Kevin O'Connor. So if you want to hear me talk some college hoops, that's the place to be on Monday night. But Hoops Tonight, we'll be back on Monday morning. Jackson and I will be back. And then next week, we got a bunch of huge games to cover as we get into the final stretch of seeding. And then in the week after that, we got our series previews and play-in tournament that we'll be covering. So lots of interesting stuff on the horizon. Again, I appreciate you guys for rocking with us, and we will see you on Monday.